Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom today. Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the 50-day Omer count. 2/3 of the way from Egypt to Mount Sinai today, the 18th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5777, 14th of May of the year 2017. I'm actually here in Jerusalem, but able to have shots of the wonderful Mount Meron, where all the focus of the eyes of Israel is today, being the commemoration day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, our leader, our inspirer, the author of the Holy Zohar, and the source of our very neshama. And we pray that with the merit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, to whom we connect ourselves today, in his merit that indeed the fire of Torah will burn in us, and we shall have this fire in our neshamot, this fire of Torah burning inside us. And let us now turn to today's studies. It's appropriate day today to study what we were intended to study last Thursday, but owing to electrical works in our neighborhood, which caused the power supply here to be cut every few minutes, and it was impossible to work our equipment, and so I was obliged, unfortunately, last Thursday to abandon today's studies. But perhaps it has worked out for the good, because today we'll be studying in the book of Job, looking back over the chapter 28, the extraordinary chapter of praise to Chokhmah, to wisdom, the greatness of wisdom. And we should be looking today at the commentary of the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, on this remarkable chapter. In this way we linger over it, and his commentary is coming to explain to us the esoteric meaning of the chapter. So presently we shall be turning to that, and let us therefore move over now to the book of Job, chapter 28, which we've already studied. And let us go now to look at Ramban's commentary on chapter 28. Shalom today, the 18th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5777. Today, Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer count from Egypt to Mount Sinai, the commemoration day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And today, as we continue in our studies of the book of Job, having just looked at the simpler and the allegorical meanings of chapter 28 of the book of Job, with its extolation of the supreme value and greatness of Chokhmah, of wisdom, and the pursuit of wisdom, we now come to look at the commentary of Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, known to us as Ramban or Nachmanides, who lived in the 13th century. His early life overlapped with the lifetime of Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, known to us as the Rambam Maimonides. And Nachmanides, who was born towards the end of Rambam's life, lived until the 1270s, mostly in Spain, but at the end of his life, as a result of a very famous disputation which Ramban had with a Meshumad, a Jew that became converted to Christianity and became a persecutor of the Jews, and demanded a disputation with the rabbis of the city of Ramban, where Ramban was Rav. The disputation was a famous disputation held in front of the king of Spain, and Ramban indeed was effectively victorious, but the church refused to lose face and demanded that Ramban be exiled for all of the heresy against Christianity, as it were, that he had expressed in the disputation. Ramban is one of the key figures of the chain of Kabbalah that has come down to us from the Tanaim, from Rabbi Akiva through Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in whose honor we are celebrating today Lag BaOmer. And the tradition was passed secretly by a chain of sages who had access to the original text, to Sefer Yetzirah and later texts. And these were handed down until in at the latter end of the life of Ramban, the Holy Zohar was revealed into the world. And already in the writings of Ramban we see, as we shall find in the coming commentary on chapter 28, we shall see that Ramban clearly understood all of the concepts of the Kabbalah. So let's now turn to the text of Ramban's writings on Eov chapter 28, looking from his commentary on verse 28. Verse 28, Vayomer le'odom, higid le'odom she'yir'u milefonav. God has told Adam, humanity, that they must be in fear and reverence before him. Vehi kol chochmosam, that is, all of their wisdom can all be summed up in yir'ah, awe and reverence and fear, which is the gateway to any true knowledge of God. That is one side of it, the side of chochmah, wisdom, the right-hand side of the tree. V'sur mero, the left-hand side, gevurah, here imposed self-discipline, self-imposed discipline, sur mero, turning away from evil, the other side of Job's conclusion. He binosom, that is their bina, understanding, on the left-hand side, left-hand column of bina, understanding, rational, analytic understanding of what are the consequences of yirat shomayim, of reverence. One has to turn away from evil. Kizeh kol ha'adam, this is all of what Adam is. Ubazeh yusha'o, through this they shall receive their salvation. B'mufla mehem al yish'alu, from that which is too wondrous for them they should not ask. Uv'mechuse mehem al yachkoiru, from that which is covered away from them they should not investigate what came before creation, what is after creation, what is behind all of this. We cannot fathom it, we should not expect to, we must go with a Torah path of simplicity. Ke'ein lohem isek banistorois, for humanity has no business with the hidden secrets. V'hishlim inyonov kederech sheishlim shlom hamelech olav shalom sefer koheles. Now Job has completed his inyanav, the subject of his discourses. There are still a few yet to go before he will cease to speak anything more than one or two verses. But here the very summit of Job is his expression of his pursuit of wisdom. That is the summation, and the coming chapters of the remaining discourses of Job in this cycle, they are about how he actually applied this chokhmah in his life, coming to his final summation in chapter 31. So this is really the conclusion of Job's arguments. Just like King Solomon concluded Sefer Koheles, his book of Ecclesiastes, Sof davar hakol nishma es ha'elokim yireh. Sof davar, the end of the word, the end of the matter. Hakol nishma, after we've heard all of the discussions, the explanations, the midrashim. Es ha'elohim yiro, you must fear Elohim, God. Ve'es mitzvosov shmor, you must guard his precepts, his commandments. Kizeh kol ha'adam, that is the whole of man, the whole of humanity. That is our task. V'zeh yoyre al datoi usforosoi. So this, the discourse we have had in chapter 28, yoyre indicates datoi usforosoi, the opinion and the svara, the logic or the reasoning of Job. Ki hem toivim b'yedio uvahashkocho b'nefesh. I find this phrase very hard to understand and to adequately translate, but what I think it is saying is that these are two matters that Ramban has written about earlier on, and we should refer to this presently. There is Yediyah, knowledge. I understand this being God's knowledge of what is going on in the lower realms. It is not, says Job, that God has no knowledge. Uvahashkocho b'nefesh, God has providence over the soul. So, dato usavorosa, the opinion and the reasoning of Job is that they are good. We have good foundations when it comes to believing in God's knowledge of the lower realms and His providence, His control over the lower realms in terms of the nefesh, the soul. Rak ba'olam hazeh yired vorem sheloi kadin v'yit'eh bohem. But in this world, he sees things that are not apparently in accordance with proper justice, the suffering of the righteous and the success of the wicked. V'yit'eh bohem, he, like so many others, can go astray with them. Or yistapek yisloinen alehem, or he is filled with doubts and he complains about them. Kasher perashti b'maneh aleil halekel yiskon gever, like Ramban has already explained to us in the speech of Eliphaz, which begins with the words Halokil Yiskon Gever, can a person help or avail God? Where Ramban explained this latter point about what indeed was Job's complaint at length, and we studied it in that section. Now this, then, the above is the explanation of these verses according to their simple, direct meaning. This is in the manner of this book, in the various arguments presented in the book. However, the Baalei HaKabbalah, the masters of the Kabbalah, they will explain the matter as follows. So we need to, here in this section, have our finger in our text of the Bible to follow through with Ramban, the verses that he is going to be explaining in discussing the Kabbalistic allusions of this section. And let us recall that Job's argument essentially in the whole section in praise of wisdom is that everything material has a limit, and it's only wisdom that has no limit because it comes from nowhere, from no place that can be definable, because wisdom is from God. And the whole section began then in beginning of chapter 28 with verse 1, Ki yesh la kesef moitzo umokom lazohov izoiku. That silver has its motza. Yesh la kesef motza, verse 1 of chapter 28. Silver has its source. Ki yedaber b'maise merkovo ha'elyono. Here, Job is speaking about the supreme Merkava, the supreme chariot. This is the chariot of which the prophet Ezekiel in chapter 1 of Ezekiel sees an image of the actual Merkava Ha'elyonah, and it is to this, the supreme chariot, that Job is alluding in this mention of the four metals, silver, gold, and bronze and iron. V'omrim, the Kabbalists explain, Ki albur matochois anizkorois b'pasuk yirmezu lemoitzo yesoidom shemechlol eses firois. The Kabbalists will say that these four metals that are mentioned in this verse allude to the source of their yesod, their foundation. The four metals have each of them their foundation, michlol ese hasfiros, out of all of the 10 spheres, because the 10 sphirot are arranged in essentially 3 main columns, all fitting down to the bottom sphira of Malchut. There is the right-hand side, the center column, and the left-hand column of the sphirot that are shining down the blessing to the Malchut, and it is the source of these metals lies in these 4 yesodot, which are on the right-hand side the yesod of mayim, water. On the left-hand side is the yesod of eish, fire. The center column is the yesod of ruach, of air, and receiving down on the bottom is earth. The 4 elements of the Kabbalah alluded to in the verse here through the silver, which is on the right-hand side of chesed, kindness. Gold, which is with its redness on the left-hand side of Gevurah, and bronze, which is between the 2, copper, is the center column of Tiferet, and then the receiving element, Malchut, the kingdom, that is iron, earth. And so Ramban is telling us that in these 4 metals are alluded the source. It is these 4 yesodot that actually encompass all of the 10 sphirot, because all of the sphirot on the right-hand side, from the whole column of Chokhmah, Chesed, and Netzach, are all on the side of Kesef, silver. The sphirot on the left-hand side, that is of Bina, Gevurah, and Hod, are on the side of gold. The center column, which is Keter, Da'at, Tiferet, and Yesod, is Nechoshet, and the receiving element, iron, that is earth, is Malchut. So this is alluded to in the 4 metals. These 4 metals, these 4 yesodot, which are the yesodot of the 4 chayot, whose representation or image or form Ezekiel witnessed on his level in the form of the face of the Aryeh, the lion, on the right-hand side, of the Shor, the ox, on the left-hand side, the Nesher, the spirit, in the center column, and the face of Adam, which is the earth element, the receiver. So Ramban is alluding to these aspects here. And to continue now with Rambam's explanation. V'keit som lachushech, the words of Job in the earlier part of the discourse, that is in verse 3, an end has he set to darkness. Which darkness is this, says the Ramban, anizkar b'ma'aseh bereishis. This is the darkness that is mentioned in the work of creation, that is the first chapter of Genesis, where it says, v'choshech al pnei tehom, there was darkness on the face of the deep. What is this darkness? V'hu chokar tachlis hakol. So the Creator fathomed the end of everything, where it says that Keit som lachoshech, he said an end to darkness. The Creator already on the level of Keter, the crown, he already got down to the very end of everything, ad binyan anivne min ha'osios, all the way to the structure that was built out of the letters. This is the structure which is in the Chalal HaPanui, the vacated space into which radiates the Kav, the line of the Kabbalah, and the extending light of the line is becomes discernible as the Partsufim, which are all built out of the 22 primordial letters of the Aleph Bet. V'kor'u nesivois achochmo nachal. And now the paths of wisdom, that is the emanation which comes forth from the sphira of wisdom, which comes out of keter, out of nothingness. This is called in verse 4 the Nachal, the river. Verse 4 of our chapter 28, Poratz Nachal Me'im Gor. The Nachal, this is the radiation of the 32 pathways of wisdom, breaks forth. V'hu ha'oise bohem pimo le'yois nigor mishom. It is he that is the creator through the sphira of Chokhmah that makes through these 32 pathways of wisdom, which are the 22 letters of the alphabet and the 10 different kinds of nikud, 9 separate nikud and 1 vacant for malchut. These 32 pathways, he makes through them a mouth, liyos nigor misham, for this river to be drawn down from there, this river of revelation that comes down the tree of the Sfirot. V'hoyu nishkochem mini regel. So, according to the pshat of the Metzudat David, that the river changed course and the people stopped going to draw the waters there anymore. The pshat of the rabbis of the Talmud, that this refers to Sodom, who stopped the travelers from passing by. But now, why nobody could get there, says Ramban Kabbalistically, Moshel l'roiv emek, l'roiv oimek or inyon. This is a parable, a metaphor, for the tremendous depth of the matter, that people just can't walk around there. Ve'eretz mimeno yotzo lechem. So now the verse continued in verse 5 of chapter 28, that this blessed land, which according to the Midrash was the glorious land of Sodom before it was overthrown by the volcanic overthrow. But here on the Kabbalistic level, the allusion is ve'eretz mimeno yotzo lechem, a land from which came forth the bread, yirmoz l'rotzoin shemimenu moitzo hachayim umidas hadin. This alludes to the ratzon, the supreme will, shemimenu moitzo hachayim, from which is the source of achayim, of life, umidas hadin, but likewise the attribute of justice. The world is run both by the side of chesed, of life, of kindness, expansion, but also by the side of severity and discipline, the side of judgment, din. So now the verse continued in verse 6, Mokom Sapir Avoneho, the place where whose stones were sapphire, Chof Bes Oisios. These stones are an allusion to the 22 building blocks of creation, the 22 letters of the Aleph Bes. Nesiv lo yodoa ayit. This is a pathway that even the ayit, bird of prey, did not know it. This bird that, or the eye of the other bird, the ayor bird that can see from Babylon to Israel. So no eye of the sharpest sighted birds could see it. Lamed best ntivo. Is this referring to the 32 pathways of wisdom? Shetchilosom because their start is from one particular pathway. This is the pathway of Keter, the very source, the one that is called Ayin, nothingness, Asher Loi Noida, the Malochi Ashores, that is not known to the ministering angels. That is why we say in the Kedusha of Shabbat and festivals that the angels ask, Aye Makom Kavodo, where is the place of his glory? Because the source of the Kavod in Gematria 32 is not known even to the angels. V'lo hibit ayin oy maris. He saw no ayin, no color, no something visible, oy maris, no appearance. B'chalomish sholach yodoi. The verse continues, according to the Pshat, simple meaning, about how God set forth his hand against the flinty stone of Sodom. But here, Himshil achochmo l'chalomish tzur. He makes a metaphor for wisdom to the chalamish, the flinty stone, rock, on account of the pathways that were hidden away in it. As wisdom begins its expansion through Bina and the subsequent Sfirot, the 32 pathways are revealed. But until that time, they were included in this flinty rock, which if you strike it, flashes will spark forth in all directions. So the verse continues in verse 9, Hofach mishoresh horim, God overturned from their root the mountains. V'gilo hanistor tachtom, He revealed that which was hidden beneath the mountains. V'yikore yoirim hahavoyos anichlolois b'shem mayim b'maise bereshis. In verse 10, the pasuk, the verse says, "Batsuros yoirim bikeya," and the rocks he caused to break forth at the yorim, channels or rivers. So now Ramban explains here, "V'yikro yoirim," he will call with the term yorim these channels or rivers, hahavayos, the different permutations of the mighty name of Hashem, the tetragrammaton, the different permutations that rule, hanichlolois b'shem mayim, these different permutations of the ruling permutations of Havaya, all included in the word water in the work of creation. That is in Genesis 1, where it says, that the earth is devastation and the waters are covering over the face of the earth. These waters, these are the Havayot, the emanating names of Hashem that are radiating into the creation. And it is after the rivers of revelation came forth, the conclusion of verse 10, words which according to Pshat are extremely difficult to understand. Kol yakor, every glorious thing, ro'aso einoi, did see his eye. Now, according to the level of the Sod, the Nistar, Ramban explains, Haniyeh b'maise bereshis, all the glory that came about in the work of creation. V'hoyo ha'olam mayim b'mayim, the world was waters mixed with waters. At the very beginning of creation, before the second day, all the waters were mixed up. It was only on the second day that God divided the waters to the upper waters and the lower waters. V'chovash oisom v'hivdil ben mayim l'mayim, he bound them up, as is alluded to in this very section in verse 11, Mebechi Nahoris Chibesh. We had the whole allusions in the Midrash of the word Mebechi, which is from the weeping, how the lower waters, when separated from the upper waters, were weeping. And this secret is in the Midrash, is here found in the level of the Sod, that God divided the waters from the waters, b'mayim yehirokia, in the fiat of creation, the second day, yehirokia, let there be a firmament. And then at the end of this introductory section to chapter 28, at the end of now verse 10, v'salumo yotzi or. Salumo, well, we saw Rashi commented talumo, that is the chalon, the window, the aperture in the physical heavens through which the spiritual light emanates, and through which, as it were, the light of the sun shines through. V'salum achochmo hoitzi lo or, that which was hidden in the first sphira of chochmo, hoitzi lo or, through the successive stages of the unveiling of the Sfirot, he brought forth that which was hidden out of the light. And continues Eov in verse 12, Mitzi'oso me'ayin, from where is the existence of Chokhmah? V'lo yoda enosh erko. No person knows her erech, says Ramban Sidro. La'aroch in Hebrew not only has the connotation of to evaluate, la'arich, but also aroch is to make an order, like the marechet of the lechem aponim in the Mishkan, the order of the bread in the holy sanctuary, sidro. So nobody knows the inner order of wisdom. They are hidden from everybody. Simotze be'eretz achayim, continuation of verse 13, it is not found in the land of the living, where we saw the different drashot about a person has to kill themselves to get this wisdom. But here, says Ramban, on the esoteric level, the land of the living, these are hamal'ochim. These are the malachim, the supreme agents, so-called angels. B'mokom shehem roitzim lo das oiso. It is not found in the place that they wish to know it. That is to say that the intrinsic olam ha'atzilut is above the world of the angels, who can attain only at the very top level to the world of Bria. And the lower angels are in Yitzirah. So the actual source of Chokhmah, which is in Atzilut, is beyond the level of the angels. That's why they have to ask, where is it? Ayem Makom Kavoda, where's the place of his glory? Toham Amar Loivihi, the depth says she's not in me. Well, we saw the midrashic discussions of this verse that the angel of death came running to Ben Amram, to Moses at the time of giving the Torah, to find out where is the Torah, and Moses kept on confusing him. Derech Melitza Yomer, so in a way of eloquent rhetoric, the verse says, Ki boire achochmo me'ayin, that he creates chokhmah out of a level called ayin, nothingness. Nothingness, not because it does not exist, but because we cannot put any definition upon it. There is no thing that we can recognize or discern. V'oid shenelmu min hamalachim ad boi'o. And more than that, because any revelation of this, she is hidden from the angels until she comes in the form of Malchut, the revelation down below. Rako Elohim, al yedei izboinenus, etzil mimeno arba yesoidos asher yisaper. But God, through his boinenus, people might translate this as his contemplation, this is his analytic development of the creation stage by stage. Etzil mimeno, he caused to emanate from Chokhmah, arba yesoidos asher yisofer. The four yisodot, the four elements that we've mentioned earlier, the four metals, out of which can be counted, which are on the level of the sfirot, unlike Chokhmah, which is beyond number. Now as the revelation of Sfirot comes down, it becomes numbered into these four categories. V'heim kitzoso oretz, these are the ends of the earth, the dimensions of the earth, that is alluding to the Vov Ketzovos, the six directions of Tiferet, of Ze'er Anpin, that is north, south, east, west, up and down, the six directions, corresponding to Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. V'tachas HaShomayim, under the earth, which is the Malchut. Sheshomo Eish, V'aruach, V'amayim, it is under the heavens that are the three main elements contained in the earth element, namely fire, spirit, and water. Oz Ro'o, now coming to the glorious conclusion of this chapter in Job. Verse 27, Oz Ro'o, then he saw her, V'yisapro, and he enumerated her, Echino v'gam chakoro, he established her and he investigated her. So here Ramban explains to us, B'machshovo hakoidemes, He had originally seen the wisdom and its extrapolation on the level of the machshavo akudemus, the prior thought. V'hoitzi mimeno sefer usfar v'sipur. He brought forth the three levels that are enumerated in the first Mishnah of Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer, the book, Sfar, number, and Sipur, the story, the communication. For the Torah is a Sefer assembled by God, the Sofer, the supreme author. The Sefer is the book consisting of letters. The Sfar is the numbers, which are the values of the letters. The Sipur is the content and the communication of the letters and the numbers together. So here we have the three columns. We have the Sefer on the side of wisdom. We have the Sfar number on the side of understanding, Bino. And the Sipur in the center column, the communication, the knowledge, which is Da'at. Chochmo, Tevuno, Vodas, the three levels of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And he says to man, it is the fear of God that is wisdom. Shehim midas tuvoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Wisdom is indeed, says Ramban, expressing what Job is saying here, wisdom is the midas tuvoi, the attribute of the goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeu darkom bepsukim alolu. This is the path of their path, the path of the Mekubalim in these verses. And now Ramban, having opened up a tefach, a little handbreadth, to get a glimpse of the esoteric depths of this biblical prophecy. After all this, he ends very cryptically and enigmatically, having revealed one handbreadth. He's going to cover over another two and leave us wondering. These words of these teachings, then they in themselves shall surely be praised and lauded. Avolo yodanu. But we do not know if this inyan, the subject here in this ma'aneh of Job, sovel aperush hazeh, really does bear this perush, this explanation that we have received. And he concludes, ve'im kabolo, but if it is kabbalah, if it is a received tradition, Im kabbalah hi nakabel. If it is a received tradition, then we shall receive it. So with that we conclude this amazing Perush commentary of Nachmanides Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, on the esoteric meaning of Job chapter 28. So with that, my friends, we conclude our study now of the Tanakh, and we'll be back in God willing in just a few minutes with after a brief interval with our studies of the Holy Mishnah for today. Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom, and back again now today to our studies. And we come today to the Holy Mishnah, continuing where we left off in chapter 14. And I'll have much more to say, God willing, about Lag BaOmer later on today when I will be addressing the subject of Lag BaOmer in this week's Shavuot Tov. Before I continue going into our Mishnah, let me just add a word for anybody who would like further elucidation about the mention we had in Ramban's commentary on Job about the three concepts of Sefer, Sfar, and Sipur. For those who wish to read a very fascinating account of this subject, it's contained in Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's remarkable commentary on the Sefer Yetzirah, where, as I mentioned, the concept of the three, the book, the number, and the story are contained in the very first Mishnah. And starting with page 19 of this work, there are quite a few pages of a most fascinating elucidation of the whole subject. So with that, let us now turn to today's study of our Mishnah. Shalom, today, the 18th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5777, Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer count, corresponding to the 14th of May of the year 2017. And today we begin our study of Masachet Shabbat, Perek Yud Dalet, the 14th chapter of Tractate Shabbat, which opens a new area in the discussion of our Mishnah in the various melachot, the labors that are forbidden on the Shabbat. And we shall come to some rather surprising understandings, apparently, about under what category of malacha various different acts do come as we enter now into chapter 14 of Masachet Shabbat, the chapter known as Shmona Shiratzim. The 8 kinds of shiratzim, these are the 8 creatures, the 8 different kinds of creatures that we shall elaborate in just a moment before what they are and how they come into this section. But before we go into that, let us just look at what are the main labors which our chapter is speaking about. Because at the end of the previous chapter, chapter 13, we were dealing with the labor of tzad, of trapping an animal. And chapter 14 now continues with the subject of tzad, of trapping some kind of animal or creature. And one might do this for several purposes. And depending on what the purpose was, one might or might not violate other labors of Shabbat. So in the opening Mishnah of this chapter, we're going to be talking about the different prohibitions involved in the trapping of different kinds of animals, be they animals that could, or creatures that could harm one, like a snake or a scorpion, or animals that one doesn't like to have around one, even though they might not physically attack a human being. One doesn't like various kinds of rodents and lizards around. There are animals that one traps for their skin, as in the case of the deer mentioned in the previous chapter. So our chapter begins now with the Shmona Shiratzim, the 8 kinds of creatures that are spoken about in the Torah, and this is in the book of Leviticus in chapter 11. In chapter 11 of Leviticus, speaking about the different kinds of clean and unclean creatures and what happens if they die and a person has contact with the cadaver of the animal, the Torah says in Leviticus chapter 11, verse 29, V'zeh lochem atome basheretz ashoretz ala oretz. This those enumerated in the coming two verses, this is the next verse, this is the tameh, the unclean, basheretz, in the category of creatures called a sheretz, hashoretz ala oretz, that creeps over the earth. The sheretz is a creature that creeps like a rodent or a lizard or smaller creatures, which we'll discuss in a moment. There are 8 of them enumerated here in the verse, and the identification of these species is subject to some controversy. Achoiled, the weasel or rat, v'achbor, the mouse, v'atzov, might be some kind of frog, the minehu, in his various kinds. So 3 of the 8 are enumerated in this verse, and in the next verse, verse 30 of Leviticus chapter 11, are enumerated Hanoko, which is a kind of small lizard, Koyach, which is a longer kind of lizard or reptile, Haltor, again some kind of lizard-like creature with a long tail, Ve'achoimet, sometimes identified as a large slug-like creature, a long black, sleek little snake-like creature. There's not a snake, but more in terms of a slug. Ve'atin shomes, sometimes considered to be like a mole. The identification is subject to controversy. The law is that one who touches a small amount of the cadaver of one of these creatures that has died, the measure is even less than the measure for a regular nevela, a cadaver of one of the unclean animals or one of the unclean chayot, the larger wild animals. But these Shmona Shiratzim, which is spoken about here, the Shmona Shiratzim Amurim B'Torah, coming into our Mishnah now, the 8 kinds of sheretz. A sheretz is defined by Rashi on Leviticus chapter 11, verse 10, as a creature that is low, that creeps and moves across the ground, using the word rachash. Now, the word remes, which also appears in our Mishnah of another kind of such creature, the remes is another kind of creeping creature. It could be as small as a bug that is crawling over the ground, or it could be a larger creature like a worm or some creature. But there's 8 specific creatures that are mentioned in the Torah. Hatzodon ve'achoivel bohen chayov. Anybody who traps any one of these creatures, whether it's the choiled, the rat, the achbar, the mouse, the tzav, this kind of frog, according to the identification of this particular edition, the anoko, the koyach, these various kinds of lizards, the lator, the choimet slug, the atin shomes, the mole, anyone who traps one of them, ve'achoivel bohen, and the person who makes a wound in them, chayav, he will be liable for violation of the Shabbat. Here there are 2 separate labors involved. Hatzon, on the one who traps the animal, there is a specific labor that was in the sanctuary in the trapping of the various animals whose skins were used in the sanctuary, or the snails that were used for the techeret dye. So that is one of the 39 forbidden labors. Ve'hachoivel bohem, somebody who makes a wound in one of them, that is to say, lets blood in one of them. Trapping is one labor, but choivel is to strike a blow to the creature that brings forth blood. And in the case of all of these Shmona Shiratzim enumerated there, they are all considered to be animals that have skin and that have blood. And although the measure of their tum'ah is not the same as the measure of that of nevela, of larger animals, they're certainly forbidden to eat, but the question of when they're called tameh in the passage in Leviticus, that is referring to the tum'ah caused by touching even a tiny piece of the flesh of one of them, ka'adosha, the size of a lentil, much less than kazayit, the size of a regular nevela, the size of an olive. So this is the law in the case of one of the Shemona Shiratzim. Usha'ar shekotzim uremosim. But all of the other shekotzim uremosim, all of the other little creepy creatures, the Hebrew word sheketz, also in Aramaic shiktzo, is translated as an abomination. It's something that people loathe. People loathe in horror against these creepy, crawly creatures. Remosim is the word that is found in the is translated in the Targum of Leviticus chapter 11 verse 44 as richasho de rochash. This is called richasho de rochash. This is any creature that is rochesh, which is Rashi's explanation on the word sheretz. All of these creepy crawlies will now any one of these achoivel bohen patur, somebody who strikes a blow to one of them, he is exempt from a sin offering. That is to say that this is not considered to be a malacha. Under what circumstances would the act of causing a wound be considered a malacha? And why would somebody who strikes, if it's a bee or a cockroach or some other creature of that nature, any other than the 8 enumerated in the Torah, why is he exempt? Because these creatures are not considered to have skin or blood as such. And why is the act of causing a wound that would let blood, why would it be a forbidden labor in the case of the Shemona Shiratzim, which are considered to have blood? Considered a labor for one of two reasons. When a person makes a wound in the skin, be it an animal or a person, so the blood that was absorbed within the tissues of the body now is separated from it. And that is considered to be a toladah, a derivative of the av melacha, the father melacha, the paradigm melacha of dash, the labor of separating the kernels of the crop from the stalks. Before the kernels can be ground into flour or used, they have to be separated from the stalks. That act of separation is called dash, as in threshing. And any labor that follows that archetype of separating something was attached to something else and causing it to become separate, for example, schita, the squeezing of fruit juice from the actual flesh of the fruit, would also come under the category of dash, of threshing, because it follows the archetypal pattern of separating the juice that was absorbed in the fruit out to the outside. Likewise, achoivel, somebody who causes a wound, is considered to be separating the blood from the underlying skin and tissue, and that is a forbidden labor on the Shabbat. And dash, the labor of threshing, was certainly one of the 39 labors in the sanctuary as enumerated in our tractate in chapter 7. Another forbidden labor under which choivel, causing a wound, comes is that of tzoveya, of making color. One of the 39 labors is that of dyeing, for example, in the dyeing of the threads and the fabrics of the sanctuary. And any kind of coloring of a fabric or of a tissue, as with blood, which stains the skin of an animal and dries and makes a mark there, that is also considered to come under the category of the forbidden labor of coloring tzoveya, which is also enumerated in the 39 labors. So in the case of the Shemona Shiratzim, the 8 kinds of rodent or reptile creatures enumerated in Leviticus chapter 11 verse 29 to 30, Somebody who does either of these two things, either traps them because they may be trapped for the use of their skins, or hachoyvel bohem, he's causing the blood to come forth, he will be chayev, liable. She'or shkotzim rumosim, other of these creepy crawlies, hachoyvel bohen potter, somebody who causes a wound is considered potter because they are not considered to have blood. Hatzodon letzoirech chayov, if somebody trapped them for a purpose, chayev, he'll be liable to a sin offering. If there was some particular purpose, positive purpose, served by the trapping of the creature, the person will be liable to a sin offering. For example, in the case of a snake, which is not one of the 8 shiratzim, if somebody trapped the snake for its skin to make snakeskin handbags or for some other similar purpose, he would be liable. Shaloi letzoirech potter. If he trapped the creature not for a need, he will be exempt from the liability for transgression of the Shabbat. An example, I believe, would be that if a person trapped a snake that is chasing him to bite the person, well, that is, if the snake is dangerous, this is a pikuach nefesh, the person can definitely prevent the snake from reaching him by any necessary means. The same with a scorpion. So trapping the animal or the creature in those cases is shalei litzorach. The person's not trapping the animal for anything intrinsic in the animal. He's trapping it to prevent the animal doing something, but there's no positive purpose in terms of having the animal now captured, served by the trapping of the animal. Even if he did not want the skin of the animal or to use it for some purpose, then he'd be potter exempt. Now we come to the question of what about domesticated animals? A person has a dog, a person has a cat. Can they close the dog or the cat in the house or get them into the house on the Shabbat? Is that called trapping the animal? This is the conclusion of the discussion at the end of chapter 13. If there is a chay or some kind of creature like a cat or a dog or other chaya, v'of, or a bird, fowl, which is under the person's domain, a domesticated animal, hatzodon patu, if the person traps them on the Shabbat, they keep them in the yard, Potter, the person is exempt, or they keep them in the house, he's exempt from any sacrifice because they were already in his domain. They were already standing there, ready trapped for him. Somebody who were to cause a wound to these animals that were in his reshus, in his domain, that will be considered to be violation of a malacha because he's letting forth blood. Either it's displaced under the skin or out of the skin. But trapping the animal in the yard is not considered to be violation of the malacha because the animal is already standing there, ready trapped. With that, we proceed to Mishnah Bet, the second Mishnah, which appears to have no relation to the subject in the previous Mishnah, but actually does. In Oisen Hilmi B'Shabbos, we do not make hilmi, which is a brine that will be used for pickling vegetables on the Shabbat. Avaloisehu es mei amelach, but the person may make salt water. V'toivel bohen pitoi v'noisen l'soch atavshil. He dips his morsel of bread into the salt water and puts it into the dish that he is eating. Amar Rabbi Yosef, said Rabbi Yosef, v'haloi'u ilmi, but isn't that not brine? Bein meruba uven mu'at, whether it's a little or a lot. What difference does it make? But the other rabbis answer to Rabbi Yosef, ve'elu hein mei melach amu. Sorry, Rabbi Yosef continues, ve'elu ein mei melach amutoren. The following would be a brine that one could make on the Shabbat. Noisen shemen batchilo l'soch hamayim or l'soch hamelach. If he puts oil, first of all, in with the water or in with the salt. In other words, by putting oil in with the water, or if he puts the oil on the salt, either way, the oil will impede the ability of the salt to be fully dissolved in the water. And that's why the form of hilmi that Rabbi Yosef is talking about is permitted, according to him, on the Shabbat. Let us now review this Mishnah, first of all, to understand why has our Mishnah come to this subject right now, after the previous Mishnah about the trapping of animals for their skins or whatever. Well, this is a related subject because in the process of tanning leather or working leather ready for use, part of the process is salting the leather. Now, actually, any kind of process that is involved in the working of leather is included under the category of ma'abed, of working leather, which is one of the forbidden 39 labors enumerated in chapter 37, me'abed. Now, making of this hilmi, which would be a very strong brine, basically of salt with water, this is somewhat similar to the preparing of working leathers, which are salted with a brine, but because the hilmi brine would be used for the pickling of vegetables for long-term use, and a strong brine would be used. And although we have a rule that the labor of me'abed in itself, that of working leather, does not apply to foods, nevertheless, we have a rule that there is a decree from our sages not to start pickling our vegetables on the Shabbat, even though it does not technically come under the labor of ma'abed, the working of leathers. So similar is the act of pickling vegetables for long-term preservation to the working of leather, that our sages decreed that this is a labor that should not be done on the Shabbat. It is one of the shivutim, the gzerot, the decrees of the rabbis, in order to make a protection against the essential labor of me'abed. So that is why our Mishnah is telling us that we cannot make this brine in its essential form on the Shabbat of salt and water. The Tanna Kama, the first opinion in the Mishnah, he says, Aval oisa u es mei amelach, one may make a salt water, he is saying here, in a small quantity for immediate consumption. Namely, if one wanted to use it as it's part of one's immediate meal, as he goes on to say, if he is going to dip his morsel of bread in that salt water to make it a little more palatable, he could use this salt water he's made to give some flavor to the dish that he's eating now at the meal. So this is the opinion of the Tanna Kama, that the gezerah of not to pickle vegetables on the Shabbat does not include where one is simply dipping a radish or a piece of celery into some salt and eating it immediately. So this is the opinion of the rabbis. Amar Rabbi Yosef, the other opinion of Rabbi Yosef, Halohu Hilmi, what difference does it make to you if he makes a small amount or a large amount, ben merubeh or ben muad, if it's a lot or a little? So it is Rabbi Yosef's opinion that continues in the second part of the Mishnah, ve'eluhein me melach hamutarin, where what would Rabbi Yosef permit, as we said, if he puts the oil either with the water or with the salt at first, and only afterwards mixes it all up together, the three of them, that will be permitted, according to Rabbi Yosef, but the actual halacha is like the opinion of the Tanna Kama, that in fact we may indeed salt our vegetables immediately prior to consumption, immediately prior to the meal, but not salt a whole lot of vegetables for consumption even much later on the Shabbat day, only for immediate consumption. And now we come to a related subject which is now coming into the consumption of different kinds of foods on the Shabbat, which one may have health reasons for consuming. And since we have been in the previous section, we started talking about the labor of dash, of threshing, where you separate the kernels from the stalks. After the labor of dash comes the labor of toichen, of grinding. And because of the prohibition of grinding among the 39 labors of the Shabbat, our sages introduced a blanket prohibition against the taking of medications on the Shabbat, except in cases of actual illness or danger to life. But for minor issues, like a minor ache here or there, if it's not life-threatening and not causing the person to be sick and in bed, our sages introduced a decree against taking of medications on account of the fact that in those days medications came not direct from the pharmacy and from the pharma producers, but from grinding of herbs. And grinding of herbs, if one came to it on the Shabbat, not for the sake of somebody who is in a pikuach nefesh, in vital need of medicine, if it's just for a minor thing, that would be an infringement of the labor of tochen. And for that reason, we're going to see in our Mishnah the prohibition of a variety of substances which are not to be taken or which may be taken on the Shabbat, depending on whether people that are healthier or not take them. And oichlin ezov yovon b'Shabbos. We do not eat this ezov yovon. The ezov is translated normally as a hyssop, yovon of Greece, but this plant is identified by the commentators as lavender. One does not eat lavender on the Shabbat, lefisha einoi machal briim, because it is not the food of normally healthy people. The taking of lavender as an internal medicine apparently is recommended on the weekdays for dealing with tolaim, that is some kind of worms or parasites within that would be eliminated through the ezovyon. So since the ezovyon or ezovyon, the lavender, would normally be taken by people who are not healthy, that is considered to be a medicine and not a food as such, and subject to the prohibition against medicines on the Shabbat for people that are not actually sick. But the person may eat a plant called yoezer. Yoezer is a kind of fern which is identified as the maidenhair fern. Yoezer, actually the Hebrew word would mean yoezer. The Yud Vav, the divine letters of Yud Vav are the Ezer, are help, a beautiful name for a herb, and the Abuv Roeh, which is the herb known as nut grass, Abuv Roeh would be the shepherd's pipe. So these may be taken because these are these are beneficial, but are drunk not only by people who are sick. The Mishnah continues, any food you like that has healthful properties, one may eat that food even if your intention is to be healed by this food, healed through your food. All kinds of beverages one may drink, with the exception of what is called mei dekolim. These are identified as waters of a stream that flows forth from two particular species of the dekel palm. The kos ikorim, likewise, one may not drink kos ikorim, literally a cup of roots, medicinal roots, Mipnei she'ein layeriko, because these specific medicines, the medikolim, the waters from the stream from between the palms, and the kos ikarim, the cup of these herbs, are liyeriko, they are recommended for jaundice. Aval shoise u medikolim litzmo, the person may drink this medikolim if he was thirsty. V'soch shemen ikorin sheloi l'refuah, he could anoint himself with the oil of the ikorin blend if it was not for medicinal purposes. Although you may not spread a cream on your skin on the Shabbat, it is because that is considered to be moreach, where a person spreads over something over a surface. It is permitted soch, to anoint oneself with oil. And where an oil is used, for example, as a soothing on the Shabbat, but not specifically for a kind of healing, that will be permitted. And now we come to the fifth Mishnah of our chapter, various medicinal procedures, whether one may or may not do them on the Shabbat. Hachoshesh b'shinov, if somebody has a mild toothache. Now, a very severe toothache is considered to be a possibly dangerous situation. But here we're talking about a mild toothache. Hachoshesh b'shinov, he should not swallow into his mouth, take into his mouth, not swallow it, but gargle with the chometz, with vinegar. Doing such a thing when he's later going to expel the vinegar from his mouth after the gargling and using the vinegar as a mouthwash. That is considered to be a medicinal procedure, which comes under the category of the prohibition of all medicinal procedures for mild aches and pains that are not serious. So that's why he may not actually gargle with the oil, avol, but he could surreptitiously, metabel u kedarko, he could dip his morsel into the vinegar to chew the bread so that the vinegar oozes out over his teeth. V'im nisrape, if he is healed, he'll be healed. So since he's doing it in a way that even healthy people would do, it is not included in under the prohibition. If somebody has a choishesh, he has a mild ache in his loins, he should not anoint himself with wine, the chometz, nor with vinegar. These are considered to be medicinal procedures. Avol sochu es hashemen, he would be allowed to anoint himself with oil, a massage oil, for example. V'loi shemen vered, but not with the oil of the rose. Rose oil is a very highly esteemed, valuable oil, and very expensive, and is therefore considered to be a medicinal procedure for most people. B'nei Melochim, the children of kings, sachin shemen vered al mokiseh, and they would be allowed to anoint with rose oil on their wounds. Shekein darkom losuch b'chol, for such is their way to anoint with rose oil on weekdays. Rabbi Shimon Omer, concluding now with the Mishnah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai today for Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kol Yisrael b'nei Melochim heim, all Israel are the sons of kings and are all fit to have the royal medicines of our holy, the royal anointing oils, and so may we merit to the Shemen HaMishcha, the anointing oil of the Torah of the holy Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. With that, my friends, let us conclude this session for the day, and with the help of God, I'll be back here at 1:30 the next hour for, God willing, a special Lag BaOmer discussion of today, something for everyone. So for the meantime, Shalom Benatayim, peace from the Holy City of Jerusalem, and see you in a while.